Welcome to another United States history lecture, this time on the Monroe Doctrine. The target that we're taking a look at today is 2.07. We're going to look first at some of the early lessons that Americans picked up about conflict, about relations with other nations, and see how that shapes America's policies to the rest of the world. The first thing that we have to note is that in the 1790s, there was a fear of war with Britain in 1795 and with France in 1798. The almost being drawn into war is going to cause a lot of Americans to be very frightened of the possibility of the young United States being drawn into a conflict in Europe that would just do damage to young America. Many Americans, but not all Americans, were afraid of these kinds of conflicts. I mean, they had fought a revolution. They remembered how awful that was. They remembered the 1780s and the Articles of Confederation. They knew about Indian wars in the West. All those things are on their minds when they think about war. What most Americans want to do is just trade with the world. Let everybody else fight while America sells its products to the rest of the globe. And while they're trading with everybody, Americans want to be politically neutral. They do not want to take sides in any of the conflicts that are going on. They would like to sell food and other products, but not take a stand in anything that's happening with Britain or France or elsewhere. And one of the reasons for that is that when war happened overseas, it caused a whole lot of political fighting between Americans. Some Americans like Britain, some Americans like France. And the more war heats up with Britain, France, and other nations, the more Americans get into fights with each other. And I'm not just talking like verbal fights, they're actual fisticuffs. Hands are being thrown over some of these issues. People are beating each other up. What do you mean you don't support Britain? Britain is the greatest country, our greatest ally. We come from the British. How dare you? What do you mean you don't like France? France was our good friend during the American Revolution. How dare you talk about France that way? So Americans are scared of conflict because of what it does to them. And it leads to debates over state versus federal power. Since the federal government has the ability to declare war, states are very scared of that possibility in the 1790s. And they're scared of the outcomes of the federal government being able to say, yep, we're going to war with Britain, or we're not supporting France. So all of these things lead to a lot of fears. And as we've looked at for President Washington, his farewell address reaffirms for Americans, just stay out of the world's business, stay out of the world's politics, sell all the products you want, but stay politically neutral, no entangling alliances. All of these lessons really hit home in the War of 1812. Which was preceded by almost a whole decade of America watching Britain and France shoot at each other, and America saying, please don't hurt us, we just want to sell you products. And so finally in 1812, war broke out, and the United States actually went to war with Britain. For a number of reasons, the British were kidnapping American sailors and forcing them to fight in the British Navy. The British were helping the Indians like Tecumseh in the West. And Americans kind of just had this long-standing dislike for Britain thanks to the American Revolution. So This is like a second war for American independence. Come on, Mama England, we're going to take you down again. This was not a particularly successful war. It was a disaster. Washington, D.C. is set on fire. The White House is burned. Americans are upset about the war's effect on the economy. It leads to a lot of political fighting. In many ways, the War of 1812 confirms these other early lessons that Washington warned Americans about. If you get involved in the politics of other nations, it will hurt people here in America. So this War of 1812 ends with no clear winner, and it reaffirms the American desire to stay out of the rest of the world's business, but still trade with other people. So here's the lesson. Thank you to President Washington, confirmed in the War of 1812. Don't have entangling alliances. Don't get into the world's politics. But things are starting to change in the 1820s, and those changes will present a new problem for Americans. What are the changes? Latin America and South American countries start declaring their independence in the 1820s. So there's revolutions in South America and Mexico, and they're saying, we want to be independent just like America did. And now Americans are thinking, wow, our sisters, they actually do call them sisters, our sisters to the south of us, what if Europeans start invading them and try to take back those countries? What if they try to mess with the United States? So it's very clear in the 1820s that Americans can't simply remain alone and expect the rest of the world to leave them alone, especially when there are revolutions going on in South America and Mexico. And maybe Europeans might try to invade Mexico, and they might try to take back South America. So what's America going to do about this? How is America going to remain independent and make sure that its sisters to the south remain independent? Well, the answer comes from the guy you're looking at on the right. A pretty lackluster, boring president who, despite doing not so much as president, leaves us with a doctrine attached to his name that is very, 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 very important. Have I made my point how important it is? Let's talk about it. What Americans would really like is to be isolated. They would like the rest of the world to stay out of American business and just let Americans sail around the world and trade with people, which at this, even in the 1780s, included trade with China and the Middle East. So it's not just with Europe. So in 1823, that boring president issues a Monroe Doctrine. Great to have a doctrine named for you so your name lives on even after you are gone. One day, I hope to have a DKO doctrine. We'll see if I can make that happen. What does this Monroe Doctrine by President Monroe say? It says this: Europe, stay out of the Americas. It's like America is putting a giant no trespassing sign on the coast of Mexico, on the coast of Latin America, on the coast of South America. It tells Europe, stay out. America would also stay out of European affairs. So we're not going to get entangling, alliancing with the rest of the world. We're going to keep to ourselves, and Europe should keep to itself. Now, I want to reemphasize at this point in time, this is all about politics. This is all about foreign relations and diplomacy. This is not about trade. America was never isolated in terms of its trade with the rest of the world, because it always wanted to make and ship goods to other places and gain access to products that couldn't be made in the United States. So keep in mind, when I say isolation, it's not America hiding itself away and never speaking or interacting with the rest of the world again. This is really only for politics. And it's really important because for the next 189 years, the Monroe Doctrine will kind of be the center of America's foreign policy with the world. America will not be involved in world politics for the most part, not be involved in alliances, but it will trade with folks. And we will come back to look at this Monroe Doctrine again when we get to study the 1890s, which is when this cartoon comes from here, because I don't have any 1823 cartoons for the Monroe Doctrine. So don't be surprised when you see this again and we talk about this cartoon again, because it's very important. 189 years. So if you want to think of the Monroe Doctrine as a giant no trespassing sign, here's another later 19th century cartoon. Hands off, stay out. That would be a pretty good image for the Monroe Doctrine. But to point to what's going to be happening later, not only is the U.S. telling Europe to stay out, the U.S. is going to take an active, really active interest in South America and Latin America and Mexico. And many times that interest in those places is not welcome by our southern neighbors. More on that later.